Hello, my name is Sarah Arney and welcome to the Kinston 101 self-guided version. This is session 1, Introduction to City Government. In this session, we'll be covering local government structure, local government leaders, conducting public business, and civic engagement, your toolbox. Feel free to take this session at your own pace. We'll be covering a lot. Let's get started. Local government structure. Where in the Constitution does it describe local government? That's kind of a trick question. Nowhere. The Constitution leaves all powers not given to the federal government to the states. Each state decides what cities should look like and should do. In North Carolina, we are a not home rule state, which means that cities and counties get all of their power explicitly from state law. In general statutes. For example, the General Statute 160A 174 is for general ordinance making power. It states, "A city may by ordinance define, prohibit, regulate, or abate acts, omissions, or conditions detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of its citizens, and the peace and dignity of the city, and may define and abate nuisances." While federal and state law always takes precedence, this general statute is how cities and counties justify the ordinances that they make, or it's one of the general statutes that they use. Let's take a closer look. Can a city require people to mow their lawns? Yes. Long grass encourages animals like mice, snakes, and bugs, which can be detrimental to health and safety. Under this ordinance, which protects citizens, a city may regulate something that is potentially impactful to health and safety. Let's try another one. Can a city regulate the color of your house? This is a good example of how ordinances change over time depending on court cases and state law. Currently, the answer is no. The color of a house doesn't affect the dignity or peace of a community enough to warrant city intervention, unless the house is in a historic district and there might be regulations around keeping that house within the same historic parameters to maintain the district status. The other major document, which helps define the powers of a city or a county, is the charter. A city charter is the basic document that defines the organization, powers, functions, and essential procedures of the government. Kinston's is just 4 pages. It incorporates Kinston as a city, identifies its governing body as the city council, describes their election process, and the administration of the city. The final step is a special assessment provision authorizing street improvements without a petition. So there are counties and there are cities in North Carolina, or municipalities. Municipalities, towns, cities, villages are all under the same umbrella. They all kind of mean the same thing. Counties are the arms of the state of North Carolina. There are 100 counties, and they are supposed to cover the basic services that the state wants all North Carolinians to have. It includes many partisan positions, which means that folks like the commissioners or the sheriff can run under political parties. And most county roles are mandatory, meaning they are required by the state legislature for those roles to exist. Cities, on the other hand, grew out of a need that developed when more people began gathering in the same place and had special needs for living in an urban area, like increased public services needs or electricity or things like that. There are currently 552 municipalities in North Carolina, which make up around 50% of the North Carolina population. The leaders of cities are mostly nonpartisan positions, which means that they are running for office independent of a political party. And most city services are optional, which means they are not required by general statute. However, if the city chooses to provide a service, it must cover the entire city. What's in the city and what's in the county? This is a general Venn diagram of what services are in municipalities, counties, and the state. So they share a lot of overlap, but municipalities are going to be more responsible for things that come about when lots of people live together and in an urban setting. For example, downtown development would be in municipalities. The police force is also particular to municipalities. Municipalities and counties can share a lot of services. For example, Parks and Recreation, the Kinston and Lenore County Parks and Recreation Department is shared by both the city and the county. Counties, as the arms of the state, share a lot of responsibilities with the state and have specific branches of state offices. For example, the Lenore County Board of Elections, the Lenore County Register of Deeds, the Sheriff Law Enforcement Department, EMS, and Lenore County Cooperative Extension are all examples of that. One important thing to note is that streets are shared by cities, counties, and the state. So for example, the city of Kinston maintains most of our streets, but for example, Queen Street, which runs through our downtown, is maintained by the North Carolina Department of Transportation and is not maintained by the city. Looking at how this plays out specifically in Kinston and Lenore County, Lenore County is responsible for things like our public school system, our public transportation system, our economic development organization, our tax department, our cooperative extension, and several other organizations, while the city is responsible for the utilities, city streets, sidewalks and lighting, downtown development, and the Kinston Police Department. Like I mentioned earlier, they do share the Parks and Rec Department, but they also interact in other kinds of ways. For example, both Lenore County and the City of Kinston each have their own planning department, but they interact fairly regularly to talk about the development that's going on in both of their jurisdictions. The last kind of partnership that counties and cities can have together, it can be shown in NRWASA, which is the Neuse Regional Water and Sewer Authority. It's a partnership with Lenore County, the City of Kinston, and several other municipalities to plan for and to build infrastructure around water and sewer needs for the entire region, planning for the future. Let's move on to local government leaders. The last major difference that I want to talk about between counties and cities is their leadership structure. So as you see on the right, county government is very complicated. There are a lot of moving parts, and the voters are responsible for electing many of these leaders. So for example, the voters can elect the school board, the county commissioners, the register of deeds, the sheriff, and the soil and water conservation supervisor, not to mention all of their state representatives. The county commissioners do not have control over the register of deeds, the sheriff, or the local school board, although they partner with these organizations. The county commissioners is responsible for the manager and county departments, but also the attorney, clerk, tax collector, etc. On the left, our form of government is much more simple. The voters elect the mayor and the council, and the council is responsible for hiring a manager, an attorney, and a city clerk. The manager is then responsible for hiring department heads and all other city employees. So all city employees report to the manager, but the attorney, the manager, and the clerk all report to the mayor and city council. However, not all municipalities function this way. There is a mayor-council form of government where the council and the mayor function like a city manager. So in this case, they would appoint not only the attorney and the clerk, but all department heads who would then be responsible for hiring their employees. In this case, the council and the mayor may hire an administrator for daily operations, but they are much more involved with the daily operations of the city. Most municipalities operate under a council-manager form of government because most municipalities are larger, and it takes a full-time job and someone with training to be able to run a city of any size. The city council. So the city council is elected one half at a time every 4 years. There are 5 council members and 1 mayor on our city council, which means that 3 council members are elected in one grouping, and then 4 years later, or 2 years later, the next 2 council members and then the mayor would be elected. The elections are nonpartisan, which means that they don't run under a political party. And they are elected by at large, which means that all citizens can vote for any people instead of by districts. And the top 3 vote getters in any of the elections for city council are then elected. The city council is compensated for their work. They receive a monthly stipend and a city travel budget to go to conferences or other events where they can represent the city and bring new information back to Kinston. There are 2 major responsibilities that are statutorily required for the city council. The first is to pass an annual budget. The city must pass a budget by July 1st on every year. And as part of that, they determine what services and what level of services the city is going to provide, which is attached to how high they set the tax rate and how much money that they're able to gain for various services and programs. The mayor of the city council represents the city, both for the citizens and to the world at large. Their other major responsibility is to facilitate city council meetings. The mayor can be given other responsibilities as assigned by the city council, and this varies from community to community. Some important takeaways for the city council is that the city council are policymakers, not managers. They help set priorities and steer the ship and pick the direction that Kinston is heading. But the day-to-day operations and the in-the-weeds management passes down to the department heads and the city manager. Council members also cannot do anything alone. They act as a body and they vote together on various issues and pieces of business, but a single council member cannot pass an ordinance and cannot make any legislative decisions for the entire council. Lastly, our council members regularly do more than is required by law. All they need to do is pass an annual budget and determine services, but they are also involved in attending community events, advocating for issues that they're passionate about, serving on other communities, committees, and boards. So they regularly do more than is required because it is the practice and tradition and the expectation of Kinston citizens. Citizens are also involved in governing the city through citizen boards and committees. There are 3 types: advisory, quasi-judicial, and policymaking. An advisory board helps make recommendations to the city council on various topics. For example, the Historic District Commission helps give recommendations to the city council about various historic aspects of the city. The planning board also provides recommendations to the board. Quasi-judicial boards and committees help determine. A quasi-judicial is sort of like a court, is what quasi-judicial means, which is when a board takes what is currently law or currently in the ordinance and tries to determine whether a particular situation is in compliance with the ordinance or not. The Board of Adjustment regularly makes quasi-judicial decisions about the Unified Development Ordinance and development that's happening in downtown. The final type is policymaking, where the citizen board can make enforceable decisions. This is primarily shown by our Parks and Recreation Commission, and it is one of the only policy-making boards of its kind in North Carolina. To be on a citizen board or committee, you can be appointed by the city council. This usually involves an application to be in good standing with the city, so not have any outstanding fines or fees, and to have a particular interest or experience with the topic at hand. For example, the Historic District Commission would involve someone who is either interested in preservation or the history of Kinston and may be able to serve on that committee with a particular experience. Now is a good moment for a break if you need one. Decisions, you may hear words like ordinances, resolutions, proclamations, and policies. We'll do a quick vocabulary lesson so you can distinguish these. An ordinance is an act adopted by a municipality that is enforceable by law. For example, a grass and weed abatement ordinance that we discussed earlier means that if a person is found in violation of the ordinance, if they have let their grass grow and it's become a public safety hazard, then the city of Kinston is authorized to require that person to either mow their lawn or allow the lawn to be mowed and then pay for the cost of that maintenance. So it is an act enforceable by law. A resolution is a statement of policy or an order that an action be taken, which is not enforceable by law. So it's really a statement about what the city council would like to see happen or a goal, but it's not an ordinance in the way that it can be enforced. A proclamation is very similar to a resolution, but it's more of a ceremonial statement, usually to commemorate a day, event, or accomplishment. It's not enforceable by law. For example, Black History Month was proclaimed by the city council and is used to commemorate that month and encourage the city to participate in the events that will happen in the community during that month. Finally, policies are guidelines which are followed by city staff and show the council's intention. It's enforceable among city employees, but it is not strictly a law. For example, the city has many personnel policies which guide the behavior and the regulations which city employees follow. For example, we have a smoking policy where we can't smoke indoors or in a room with computers in it to protect the computers. And that policy guides how the city and guests in City Hall operate and function in the day-to-day city operations. Transparency laws are for ensuring that citizens will always be able to access information and events and what's going on politically in their community. The two major transparency laws that have been passed in North Carolina are open meetings and public records. Open meetings are essentially to ensure that citizens will know about and can attend public meetings, and public records are to ensure that citizens will have access to the documents that get created during public business. Let's take a look at them each in depth. An open meeting states that each official meeting of a public body shall be open to the public, and any person is entitled to attend such a meeting. Official means discussing business that has to do with public affairs. A meeting is a near instantaneous communication of a group. A public body is any elected or appointed body that has two or more members and is authorized to exercise a legislative, policy, judicial, administrative, or advisory function. Open means giving advance notice of time and location. And entitled to attend means people should know and be able to go, but it is not a guarantee they can give a comment. Let's think about it. Can the city council get together for dinner without inviting all of us? Yes, city council members are people too. They can have dinner as long as they don't discuss any official business that has to do with public affairs. For example, they can get together and talk about the football game last night, but they can't talk about how they intend to vote on an item that will come up in the next council meeting. Let's try another one. City staff have a weekly meeting to discuss operations that citizens do not attend. Should this be an open meeting? No. Staff are not elected officials. They are not a public body and can do the day-to-day work required of the city without constantly scheduling open meetings. Let's do one more. Imagine the planning board has only one item on their agenda, so they decide to cancel their formal meeting and discuss a permit request over a group messaging app. Can they do this? No. Discussion over text or messenger apps is considered a meeting, and public bodies cannot make decisions without the public knowledge or access to the meeting. However, as was changed during the pandemic, if a public body is able to hold a meeting online over Zoom and are able to make sure that the community has advance notice of its time, location, and ways to access the meeting, they are able to use things like technology and remote meeting applications to host public meetings. There are some situations in which public bodies can close their meetings to the public, and this is called closed session. The City Council may go into closed session to consider the performance of an individual employee, preserve attorney-client privilege, discuss economic development, discuss a bargaining position for property acquisition, matters involving alleged criminal misconduct, or to preserve confidentiality of records. For example, many personnel files are confidential, and in order to discuss an employee, the City Council would need to go into closed session. A public hearing. A public hearing is an open meeting where the public has a right to be heard and give comment. These situations are usually required by ordinance. The budget meeting, zoning ordinance, and conditional use permits are all good examples where public hearings are required, but state law doesn't specify how public hearings must be conducted. The city can regulate the time allotted to each speaker, can select delegates from groups, and restrict language to maintain order. The City of Kinston's current policy is that speakers must add to the conversation. Only speak if you can provide new information or opinions, but you don't need to sign up beforehand to speak, and there is no time limit. However, a public hearing is not the same thing as public comment, which is at the beginning of every City Council meeting, and we'll cover at the end. Public records. The people may obtain copies of public information free or at minimal cost unless otherwise specifically provided for by law. The people is anyone, even non-citizens of Kinston. The records must be given as soon as possible and in the form they are requested. Public information is anything made or received during public business, documents, images, audio, film, etc. This includes documents that are made on personal devices when the content is public business. Minimal cost means the cost of reproduction, which is materials like the paper it's printed on, but also labor that requires extensive use of information technology or supervisory assistance. What does this mean? It's not always clear, but it includes copying and searching for records, but it doesn't include redacting confidential information. So the cost of reproduction for a citizen includes the time and effort that it took for a staff person to find that, but not the time and effort it takes for that staff person to make sure that there's no confidential information in the public record, unless otherwise specified. Public records do not include confidential information, which the city is allowed to keep confidential for personnel records, closed session minutes, etc. Let's think about it. A city employee uses their personal cell phone to handle a citizen complaint. Can a citizen request their cell phone records? Yes. Public record is about what is talked about, not where that information is stored. If it's public business, a citizen can request the record. However, the information that is not relevant to that particular citizen complaint would be redacted. So the citizen couldn't see that employee's personal cell phone history, only the information referring specifically to that complaint. A citizen wants a copy of every document ever signed by the current city manager. This will take a dedicated employee a month. The city will charge $1,000. The citizen argues this is not the cost of reproduction. Is this fair? It's hard to say, but a request that requires a month of steady work should reflect the cost of the labor as well as the paper the copies are printed on. Here is a good time to point out that when requesting public records, have a conversation with the staff person you're requesting from, especially if you need a lot of information. That way they can help you pinpoint exactly what you're looking for. Retaining public records. Just because a record is public business doesn't mean the city keeps it forever. General schedules, which are provided by the state, determine how long departments are supposed to retain their records. One category is when reference value ends. For something like a grant proposal, if the city didn't receive the grant, the proposal isn't necessarily relevant after the proposal has ended. The second category is between 1 to 5 years. Work orders, employment applications, accounts payable and receivable, and loan records. The last category is forever. This includes city council minutes, plans for public buildings, employee records, which are confidential, and records with historic value. Our last category is citizen involvement. Citizen involvement is generally described as civic engagement, and I like this definition. Working to make a difference in the quality of life of our communities and developing the combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make that difference. While there are many ways to be civically engaged in your community, you can also do that specifically with your local government. And here's your toolbox for being civically engaged with the City of Kinston. If you're not sure where to start, one of the greatest places to go is our customer service line, 252-939-3282. 3282 is available 24/7, and customer service representatives are there to help answer your questions about public services, but they can also direct you anywhere else in the city that you need to go. If you're not sure, if you don't have someone's number or you're not sure how to get in touch with a particular department, 3282 can help you make that connection. Talk to city staff. City staff, many of our city staff people have been here for many years and have a good understanding of the history of the city and are steeped in issues that are relevant to city operations every day. If you have a question, have a conversation with the appropriate city staff person, and they can help you understand the issue and answer questions you may have. You can also talk to a city council member. As we discussed earlier, city council members are responsible for setting priorities and the general direction of the city. If you'd like to make changes to that or talk about how they have arrived at those priorities, it's always good to talk to your city council member about the decisions that you'd like to see. You can also attend board meetings, both of the city council and citizen boards. Those meetings are open and they're always willing to be open to citizens who are interested in the decisions that they're making. You can also give feedback when the opportunity arises, when various departments put out surveys, particularly through the Public Services Department, Parks and Recreation, and the Planning Department for various projects to talk about things that you'd like to see happen in the community. If you're looking for a particular time to engage, during budget season is particularly helpful. As we mentioned earlier, the City Council has to pass a budget by July 1st, but the entire city is preparing for next year's budget from January through June. If you would like to see a change that might require funding or changes to the budget, that would be a good time to talk to that particular department about planning for it in their next year's budget. Attend city council meetings. You can participate through public comment. public comment happens at the beginning of every city council meeting. You do need to sign up beforehand or use our online link to write a comment. You can speak for about 3 minutes to the city council on any topic that you choose. If you'd like to speak for more than 3 minutes, or you have a presentation that you'd like to make, you can get on the agenda by talking to the mayor or city manager. You can also petition the city council for a change that you would like to see. However, I would suggest that you read the one-pager on the effective use of petitions. If you have not done any of the prior steps, the petition may not be as helpful, or you may not have as much background on the issue as you'd like. If you feel like you want to participate more, or you would rather see different decisions get made, you can serve on a board or run for public office or vote for the people who you'd like to see participate in those roles. Here's some advice from city leaders about engaging with the city. Find the right person. Start with staff and have an introductory conversation. Begin with why this is happening. They can give you some history and some background on how the city has been doing that process or handling that issue, and it may change your question or may lead you to additional questions. Follow the process. If you're not sure where to start, follow the outlined process that the city has already established, and if that process doesn't work for you, then you can talk to a city staff person and have some feedback for the process that you followed. Be present. If the city council is discussing an issue that you're passionate about, attend the city council meeting or reach out to staff or city council members. Being present and being physically present is best, but also remotely present if you need to be helps the city understand that there are people who care about that issue. Another point they made was the role of social media. The city is unable to respond to social media requests for change or complaints. They are only able to use it to share information, to release proclamations, to advertise surveys, and to generally share information about what the city is doing. We love it when people share information via social media, but if you have something that you would like to be addressed, 3282 is a great number to call. The last is that time and timing is important. The pace of city processes can be rather slow, or it can be at particularly important times. For example, if a project that you would like to see happen requires changes to the city budget, it may require waiting until the next fiscal year so that that money is accounted for. But being willing to talk about the process and know the good time is important. The city also has a toolbox for how it reaches out to citizens. We use one-on-one interactions between staff and citizens, city council meetings, citizen boards and committees, public meetings in the community, surveys getting feedback, our website and our social media accounts, utility bill inserts for our utility customers, community events, partnerships with local organizations, and Kinston 101, this curriculum, which helps share information about the city. I'll end with city council meetings. If you're interested in attending, the meetings are the first and third Tuesdays of every month. The first Tuesdays begin at 5:30, and the third Tuesdays begin at 7. You can find the agenda on the city clerk's page of the city website. For remote viewing, you can go to Channel 2 or join us live on the City of Kinston Facebook page. You can get on the agenda by talking with Mayor Hardy or Manager Tony Sears, or sign up for public comment before entering the council chamber, or by filling out our online survey at the link below. You have the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes or 5 if you represent a group when you come to speak in person. Thanks so much for joining us for local government, the introduction to city government. Our next session will be the hub of city government, which includes the finance, human resources, and management information services departments. Thank you.